Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome back to the Hive. In this video, we'll be taking a look at this Shelly 1 PM. The PM stands for power metering. We'll be taking a look around the box, we'll look at what's inside the box, we'll wire it up, get it paired to the native app and pair it to Home Assistant. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, if you like what I do here and you want to support the channel, there's some affiliate links in the video description to a bunch of the home automation gadgets that I have reviewed in the past and other ways to support the channel as well, like signing up for NordVPN using my affiliate link or supporting the channel directly through my Buy Me a Coffee link. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So in the last video about the Shelly dimmer, I mentioned that I got a bunch of Shellys from Scorptech and that we'd be covering the Shelly 1 PM next. So here we go. As I mentioned, I picked up an assortment of 4 different Shellys from Scorptech, and this Shelly 1 PM was $33. Now, the first and possibly obvious difference that we're going to see with this Shelly 1 PM is that this does not have the dimming functionality like the dimmer. This is good news though, because it does mean that our use case isn't limited to lighting. Something else to mention here with the Shelly 1 PM is that it has a 16 amp rating, and we'll see that when we look closer at the box. So you could quite reasonably wire this up, say in a workshop, for example, an air compressor, and use it to monitor the power and ensure that it is turned on or off at only appropriate times. Or if you have a swimming pool, perhaps you could use it to monitor the power consumption of your swimming pool pump, and again, turn it on and off only at the appropriate times. With the power monitoring function of the Shelly 1 PM, you'd be able to gather some good metrics about those devices as well, and then potentially identify a fault with them before a catastrophic failure occurs. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, something that's recently become compelling about the Shelly units is that they come with a certificate of conformity, meaning that they can be installed in Australian homes and even businesses by qualified electricians. So let's start by taking a look around the outside of the box, and it's again fairly minimal. Like the dimmer, it's a small box, only 65 by 65 by 25 millimeters. And on the top, we see Shelly 1 PM X1. I'm assuming that means times 1. We've got a Wi-Fi relay switch with power metering, 16 amps. Around the sides, Shelly 1 PM. Again, make IoT simple and designed and developed in the EU. We've got a 16 amp relay, AC 110 to 220 volts, DC 24 to 60 volts. So this one can also be powered from a DC. Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz, power metering, intelligent on and off, an embedded web server and SSL connectivity, and cloud service for remote access services and backup. On the back, ROHS compliant, Shelly 1 PM X1, some compliance information and a copyright mark, and a QR code to download the app, and the address of the manufacturer. And lastly, on the bottom, it complies with some EU standards here. So with outside of the box done, let's take a look inside and we'll take a look at the unit itself. So like with the dimmer, if we open up the box, right on top we have a QR code to join a Facebook support group. And then under that, we've got the unit itself. I'll pop the unit out and we'll take a closer look in a second. We've got some EVA foam cut out here. We've got the wiring diagram and a quick start guide in there as well. So taking a look at the unit itself, and I'll just put it side by side with the dimmer, you'll see that it's a little bit different. It's a bit more rounded, and the plastic here on the screw down terminals is a little bit further along there, and the screw down terminals are guarded a bit more by the plastic. We also note that we still have the button on the back, and in this case we've got the certificate of conformity number on the back rather than on the front. And with the Shelly 1PM, underneath this cover here is where we find, if we lift that up, we'll find the headers for flashing the unit itself inside there. We're not going to do that, so I'm just going to pop that back on. The other thing we'll see here is we've got a whole lot less connectors here. So we've got output, a switch, line 1, and a neutral here. Now, before we wire this thing up, from the 11th to the 13th of March 2023, I'll be at the Train and Hobby Show at Sandown Racecourse and Entertainment Centre in Melbourne's southeast. The Train and Hobby Show showcases the best hobbies in Australia, from model railways, ham radio and electronics, radio control models, makers and arts and crafts. And this year, for the very first time, the Train and Hobby Show is adding computing and home automation into the mix. I'll be at the Train and Hobby Show for all 3 days, and I'll be giving away some stickers. I'll have demos of gadgets like light bulbs, smart switches, and more. We'll have some basic automation set up to showcase some of the simple automations that you can do in your own home. And I'll have some Raspberry Pis, and I'll also be showing off my Grafana dashboard for energy and environmental monitoring that I have in place here. So if you're in Melbourne from the 11th to the 13th of March 2023, come on down to Sandown Racecourse and say hello. Get your tickets today at trainandhobbyshow.com.au. That's trainandhobbyshow.com.au. And now, back to the Shelly. So before we start wiring this thing up, I do need to make a disclaimer. Do not try this at home. This video is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. We're working with mains electricity here, which is very dangerous, and I'm performing this in an isolated lab environment, and I'm taking several safety precautions. While the Shelly is approved for fixed wiring, it must be installed by a qualified electrical contractor. Here in Australia, it is illegal to perform your own fixed wiring in your house. Not only that, it is dangerous. Mains electricity can kill you, and faulty wiring can cause fires. If you intend to purchase these and have them installed, insist on a certificate of electrical safety from your electrician to keep your insurance company from leaving you high and dry in the hopefully very unlikely event of fire. You have been warned. So just like the video with the Shelly dimmer, I'm going to use my Shelly testing board here, and I've already got everything loose from the last video. So over here, I'm going to put the live from the supply into this L terminal, and we'll screw that down nice and tight. And I'll grab this neutral wire and put that into the N terminal here and screw that one down nice and tight. And I'm going to take the live from the load, which is just this light bulb here, and I'll put that into the output terminal, the O terminal here, and I'll screw that down nice and tight. Theoretically, we could use this just as it is right now. We would be able to turn the light on and off, but the switch would not work. So I will take the switched live and I will wire that into the switched input here, and I will screw that down nice and tight as well. Okay, beautiful. So with that wired up, we should now be able to plug in power to our testing board here, and I can energize the circuit with the safety switch over here. Okay, and it didn't release the magical blue smoke, so that is a very good start. I'm going to open up the Shelly app here on my iPhone. Just while we're doing that, I'm just going to turn the power switch on, and the light came on immediately, and I'll turn it back off, and the light turned off. And we heard the relay click in there as well. So definitely doing what we would expect. In the Shelly app, I'm going to tap in the top right corner and tap Add Device. We'll leave HiveMind IoT and the password there, and I'll tap Next. And we're going to add via Wi-Fi, and I'm going to add a 1 p.m. So I'll tap 1 p.m. and it's searching for the device. It's asking me to join the Wi-Fi that's been created by the access point on the Shelly 1 p.m. So I will join. Okay, and it's saying add device name Shelly 1 p.m. We'll tap Next. I'm going to put it in the test room. I'll tap Next. And for the image, I'll leave it as the default image, which is a picture of the Shelly 1 p.m. and I'll tap Done. So I've got the Shelly 1 p.m. pending connection. It's updated already and it's showing 0 watts. I can turn the light on and off from the interface here. And if I drill in, it's saying unsupported firmware version to please update the device. So I should probably do that. I'll tap update and then update again, and hopefully it will reboot and be online soon. Okay, so the app is showing that it's taking quite a while to update, but in the meantime, I've found the IP address for this particular unit is 192.168.141 on my network. Obviously on yours it will be different, but we can take a look at most of the settings here. So we've got a timer, so we can do auto on and auto off here, and when on, turn off after a number of seconds if we wanted to. We can set a weekly schedule, so if we were to expand on that, we can enable a schedule timer, and we can add days of the week and the time where we want to either turn it on or off. If you were using this, for example, as a pool pump timer, you could do that there using the schedule timer. So we've then got internet and security, and we can see the Wi-Fi mode, it's in client mode and it's connecting to an existing network. And we've also got a backup Wi-Fi that we can connect it to if we wanted to do so. There is a Wi-Fi client AP roaming, so when it is below a value, it will scan for a better access point as well, so that's interesting. Didn't see that on the dimmer. In the access point Wi-Fi mode, you can configure it to create a Wi-Fi access point and you can connect to its own network, and we did that for the configuration of the unit as well. For restrict login, you can restrict the web interface using a username and password there if you want to, and you can define those usernames and passwords. There's SNTP server, so you can have it make sure that it gets the time from a network time server. There's some advanced developer settings in here where you can allow cross-origin resource sharing and enable Colo-T and Colo-T peer. I'm not really sure what all of this is. There is also enable MQTT in there, and if you enable MQTT, cloud actions will be disabled. And lastly, we've got the cloud details here, and you can also disable the Shelly cloud. That allows us to control it remotely. If we go to safety, we've got maximum power protection, and you can set a custom max power protection. So this device will turn off if the power consumption reaches 3500 watts. So you can set this to whatever you want between 1 and 3500 watts, and that will be a safety feature there. So this can act more or less as a circuit breaker if needed. We've got some IO URL actions here as well. So what you can do here is create a URL, and the Shelly will go to that URL when the button is switched on or off, or long pressed or short pressed, etc. So you can set those things and that will trigger webhooks in your smart home. And lastly, we've got settings, and there's a lot here. We've got our power on default mode for either on, off, restore last, or switch. So this one is defaulted to switch, so it'll operate based on what the position of the switch is, or you can either leave that to on or off, or restore the last power mode. The button type, if we open that up, we've got a toggle switch set up there. You can set a momentary switch, so you can have a push on or push off switch there. An edge switch, that device, so an edge switch changes state on every hit. There's a detached switch there, so the Shelly will be in a detached mode. It means that the switch doesn't affect the relays, but you can still read the data when we look at Home Assistant later. There's an activation switch as well, which will use it for a motion sensor. Any input turns on and resets auto off timer, so you can set a motion sensor on there if you wanted to. And you can reverse the inputs, so if you enable the option, the button's on-off position will be inverted. We can open up the appliance type here, so you can just define an appliance type there. Power consumption correction, so you can put in a correction factor there between 0.85 and 1.15. We can define the supply voltage here. So either 110 or 230. We're on 240. It's supposed to be 220 to 230, so that's fine. Got LED light control to disable the Wi-Fi status light. There's firmware update, which we already ran a firmware update using the app. Time zone and geolocation, so it can automatically detect the time zone and approximate geolocation. It thinks that we're in Perth. We are not. That's fine, though I'll leave it as is. And you can set it so that it automatically detects daylight savings if it's got the details right. We can change the device name. We can change the channel name. We can factory reset the device. We can reboot the device. We can make it discoverable. We can enable an external switch add-on. I'm not sure what that does. There's eco mode, so the device consumes less energy and runs at lower temperatures. You can customize the long push time. By default, that's 800 milliseconds. And then we've got some device info there. So you should be able to hit all of these same things through the app, as the same as we have through the web interface. We can see that our Wi-Fi strength is not great. Here we do have problems with our 2.4 gigahertz in this corner of the house, so I am aware of that, and it shows that the web interface is not protected by a password. It's got the time, that's the current time in Perth, because it thinks we're in Perth, but we can turn the light on. We should see that we are pulling down 13 watts, and if we turn it off, it updates to 0 watts. So that's the native interface through the web. We should have all of the same things in the native app itself. I'm not sure why it's just spinning on updating at the moment. I might restart the app itself and see if it is any better. So after restarting the app, it stopped showing as updating, and we can drill in and we can see the number of watt hours that it's consumed, and we can go back and forward in time and show a graph of the amount of energy used, and we can change, use tapping there, we can change the whether or not that is showing. We can look at particular days, we can filter by a week, we can filter by a month there. So we can get some good information just with the native app. And as we saw, we've got all of the same settings that we had in the web app, except we've got application settings. So we can exclude from the event log, we can exclude from the consumption calculations, we can add a pin lock for this phone, and we can sync the device name, or we can set up to display the input state. So if I do that, we'll go back to status and control. So now that we've changed that setting, if I turn on the light, there's a red line just underneath the on-off symbol. If I turn the switch on, you'll see that that red light just turned green. So that is how it is indicating the power state of the input. So now that we have taken a look at the native app and the native web interface and all of the settings that we can do here, let's take a look at integrating this with Home Assistant. So I'll head over to my demo instance of Home Assistant here, and I will just go to Settings, and I'll go to Devices and Services, and I'll scroll down, and we've got the Shelly 1 PM has been auto-detected. So instead of clicking Add Integration and then searching for Shelly and inputting the IP address, I'm going to click on Configure. It's asking us, do we want to set up battery powered devices need to be woken up? I'll just click Submit on that because it's not battery powered, and I will put it into the test area, and we'll click Finish. And now that that's done, if we scroll down, we've got the Shelly 1 PM in our Shelly here, and we drill in, and we've got 1 device and 13 entities, and we can drill into that, and we've got the details here. So I can turn the light on, and it's showing us power of 13.3 watts. The energy, it's got 0 kilowatt hours because it hasn't been on long enough to show anything. Because this is just an on and off switch, there's not much point in drilling in. But in the sensors, we show that we've got 1 entity not shown. So there's an input sensor here. So we can go into advanced settings and enable that. And we'll update that. And when that's finished updating, we'll then be able to see the state of the switch on the input. In the configuration section, we've got a reboot button, and there's 2 entities not shown for a firmware update and a beta firmware update. And in diagnostic, we've got overheating and overpowering, so we can actually see the state of the heat and power protection. And we've also got the status of the cloud. We've got the device temperature data in here. So let me enable the device temperature, and we'll update that. We can also see the RSSI, so the signal strength index, and we can also see the uptime there. So I will enable the uptime counter as well, and we will update that. So with those updated, we can see our power, we can see our input. I'll turn the input on, and we've got on and the switch turned on. We can turn the switch off, and our input has stayed on as well. I'll just do a quick latency test, and I'll turn the light on and off. And it was relatively quick. It seemed to be a fair bit quicker than the dimmer was, so that is somewhat interesting. I think maybe the dimmer might have needed the firmware update to be installed. So that's the Shelly 1 PM. Like with the Shelly dimmer, being able to use your regular light switches and still get smart functionality is really great. And like in my previous video about adding buttons back in, everyone already knows how to use a light switch, so you're not losing the regular functionality. Now, for something like the 1 PM, you might not want it handling lights, but you might want to put it in line with something a bit more power hungry. You could, for example, have it in line behind the wall where your fridge is to monitor your fridge consumption, or as I mentioned before, with things like a pool pump or an air compressor. At $33, it's hardly expensive, but you are obviously then going to need to spend about another $100 or so to have an electrician in to then wire it up. In a future video, we'll be taking a look at the Shelly 1 and the Shelly 1 Plus, and particularly the DC capabilities of these. So let me know your favorite Shelly in the comments below, or how you would be making use of this Shelly 1 PM. That is all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your smart home journey. Be sure to drop a comment down below with home automation ideas you'd like to see covered in a future video. And don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing now. While you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when I release new videos each week so you don't miss out on anything. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to help to support the channel, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description down below. Contributions that you make through Buy Me a Coffee get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.